And after a while, she'd be going, I know that I know. She was singing and dancing around the yard. The tempo kicked up several times. And when you saw the dust start flying, you know Grandmama had prayed through. That she had connected with something, that it didn't matter what was happening, that in our family, any crisis that came up. I had a cousin who was a year old and was in the car with her babysitter, a tragic accident. The babysitter was killed. My cousin was thrown from the car. They said she was a vegetable, would never make it. Had been in the hospital for weeks. And I remember my grandmother would go outside and she would sweep the yard and she'd sing, I know that I know that I know. Oh yes, I know that I know that I know. God is real. God is real. I know that I know that I know. One day she walked in after singing that and she told my mother and the family, she said, everything's going to be all right. That very day, my cousin came out of the coma. Today she's happily married, fully recovered. It was a miracle. Now, there were other times when she would come through and say, everything's going to be all right, and maybe outer circumstances didn't change, but she knew something. She connected. She was in touch with that aspect, the Mary element that says, can you hold, can you internalize the truth of who you are to such an extent that you can know that for everybody else? Now, the other thing that Mary holds is the capacity to be in communion, in union with the Holy Spirit. What is the Holy Spirit? The Holy Spirit is simply a word we use to describe the activity of God. Jesus described it when he said, it's like a bunch of yeast that you put in a big pile of flour. You don't see it doing anything, but it is an agent of transformation that is at work all the time. The Holy Spirit is that, it's God's agent of transformation. It's whatever the magic, the mystery is that makes a plant grow. It's whatever keeps all of our planets in alignment. It's what is keeping you alive right now. It's the activity, the evidence of God active in and among and through us. Mary is that part of us that knows how to be in union with the Holy Spirit. And so how do we know, and how do we open ourselves to an awareness of the Holy Spirit? Barbara Haggerty is a writer. Well, she's written many things, but a few years ago she was writing for the Los Angeles Times. She had an assignment to do a story, and during the story, it was about a church. It was a fast-growing church. And when she was doing the story, she had a profound transformation, much like Mary, where something happened and turned her whole life over. And so she set out and started interviewing people all over the place to find out, what is this presence and this power that comes into your life and changes you profoundly? She interviewed one woman who said, I was lying in bed and one by one my senses ceased to operate. All of a sudden I realized I wasn't able to see anymore. Then I couldn't hear anything, but I could sense, and I heard a voice. Well, I didn't technically hear it. It was some sort of communication that I could understand. And it was just reassuring me that everything was okay. I felt very calm, very safe, and the more I relaxed into it, the more safe I began to feel. She said, how would you define this voice or this experience? Is it God? Is it the universe? Was there a personality? Was it infinite mind? What was it? She said, I just call it source. It's the source of all that is and everything that encompasses it. It wasn't an old man with a beard, but it was a powerful force that could communicate with me. It was very loving, very comforting. I tear up every time I think about it. How did it end? Well, I came out the same way I went in. The first thing I could remember was that I could hear the birds chirping in my mind. And then I was thinking, what in the world just happened? She laughed as her tone grew serious. Since that day, I've changed on a cellular level. I literally feel that I'm being rewired. Everything in my life has changed. It completely changed my lifestyle. She goes on to say that over half of the people in the United States claim to have had a spiritual experience that they could circle the day on the calendar. That there is a presence and activity that is working in our life, seeking to bring about this change. David Wyeth said, "The seen and the unseen are always working together to reveal the miraculous." The Mary presence is that part of our awareness, that part of our consciousness that does always know the truth of who we are, and it knows the truth of who each and every person is. The Mary aspect of our consciousness is the part of us that, no matter how we show up in life, has the capacity to hold the paradox, how we could act like this and still truthfully be the son, the daughter of God. And Mary is that part of us that has the capacity to believe that there's more than meets the eye, that where our ability, when we reach the ends of our resourcefulness, there is still a presence and a power at work in our life, and we can commune and connect with that. The final story I'd like to share with you comes from the book Small Miracles. It's a true story of how this sometimes works in maybe a modern version of a miracle story. It's about a father and a son. Joey Rilkus was a young man who grew up in a Jewish home. His father was a devout Jew. His father had been a Holocaust survivor. His entire family had died. And Adam Rilkus had made it his life's mission to carry his Jewish faith forward. So one day when his son Joey was in college, he came and announced to his father, he said, "I'm going to drop out of college, quit my job, and I'm going to India in search of enlightenment." And Adam said, realizing that a young man had defined himself, he knew he probably couldn't stop him. But a day or two later, he came back and he said, "Dad, and I also want you to know that I don't consider myself Jewish anymore." At that particular time, the father and son had words, and Adam screamed to his son, "Get out of here, Joey. Get out of my home and never come back. You are not my son. I disown you from my heart, from my soul, from my life. I never want to see you again." "Well, that's just fine with me," Joey shouted back, "because I never want to see you again either." Joey left that day and he went to India to pursue his dreams. He said 6 years later, while walking the streets of India, he encountered a classmate. The classmate said, "Hey, Joey, I was really sorry to hear about your dad." Joey said, "My dad? What do you mean?" He said, "Oh my God, Joey, you've been here. You didn't know, did you?" He said, "I was dumbstruck by the news when I found out my father had died. In the back of my mind, I'd always hoped for reconciliation. I had somehow been sure that we would have a loving reunion one day. But now my father was gone, and every chance of reconciliation was gone. I was devastated. Within a few days, I made the decision I must go to Israel. I just feel a pull. I can't explain it. I must go to Israel. I want to go to the wall, considered the holiest site in Jerusalem. I want to pray for my father's forgiveness." So he did that. He made the trip to Israel. He found the wall. And as he found himself at the wall, he didn't really know what to do. And so he said there were people from all over the world standing at the wall. He found a piece of paper that someone gave to him, and he said he wrote this letter. "Dear Father, I beg you to forgive me for the pain I caused you. I loved you very much, and I never will forget you. Please know that nothing you taught me was in vain, and I will not betray your family's deaths, I promise." When he finished writing the note, Joey searched for an empty crevice.